Hello everybody, welcome. I'm the Warrior Witch, and you can call me Nike. So this video is going to be about sigils, and I figured that this one was actually going to be best to do digital because it's, for me, very much like a drawn format, and I think that the best way to do drawn stuff is going to be to show the examples in a digital format, so it's easiest to just bring up all my examples and show you what I need to do. So, we're going to get started, and I know that everybody's probably so sad that you can't see my beautiful face, so just for you, as a treat, I will put my face somewhere on screen in post. It'll be magic. I don't even know what picture I'm going to put up yet, so we will all find out together later. So, sigils. The basics of what they are, I think they're one of the easiest things for our newbies to get into, just because they are so accessible. If you have a pen or a pencil or some paper, you can just do something with a pen. You can make a sigil. You could even draw it into the dirt. I mean, you just need to be able to draw it in some capacity. So, sigils. They are a drawn method of putting your intention into a symbol that you then use to either charge spell work or you use that on its own for a particular purpose. And there's lots and lots of ways to do this. Everyone's going to have their own favorite method, so we're going to go over a few of them so that you know your options. But first, I'm going to start with some recommended reading. So we're going to have, if you see over here in my layers area, lots of books. And I'm going to go through all of them. They'll all show up as we go on. But recommended reading for sigils is going to include Futhark by Edred Thorsson. This is obviously going to be for runes, because runes are one of the methods you can use. I highly recommend Sigil Witchery by Tempest, Zakroff. This is a much more pictorial method. It's more like symbol-based rather than any of the other ones. And then the other two books I'm going to recommend are going to be Liber, Null by Peter J. Carroll. You're usually going to see it paired up with Psychonaut. And it's a chaos magic method, which most of this is based on anyway. And the Occult Encyclopedia of Magic Squares. This book has a lot more than what I'm going to go over myself. It's going to be super, super, super bare bones. So for any of the stuff I mentioned, I'm obviously not going to go over the entirety of the books. This isn't a Sigil Books review video. So if you want to learn more about the methods that I talk about, these are the books for you to look into. So we'll start with some of our methods. The ones that you'll find online, I'll start with first, just because those are going to be really, really common. So you'll usually see like the Witch's Wheel. You might see some pictorial methods. And you might see some boxes. I mean, there's a couple ways. But the box method, I think, is the one that you're going to find first, which is the method that you'll see in the Occult Encyclopedia. Ooh. You'll see it in the Occult Encyclopedia. You also see it in Liber Null. You'll see a couple of methods, but the box method is the one that I first came across online. These are some tables from the Occult Encyclopedia. It's a whole lot to get into, but just when you see these, you'll know that that's what you're going for. And these refer to the box size, like the 3x3 for Saturn. That'd be like this method. And each planet that you'd want to invoke has different sizes and different numbers. And so the book goes into all of those if you want to see those. There's a lot to it, for real. Get that book if you want to do that. But for the box method, so I'm going to take out the rest of these. Usually it starts with putting letters assigned to numbers. So if you have A, J, or S, that's a number 1, etc. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just go right down the column. So for example, if you were going to write love, we'll make it really, really, really simple. So you'd find the letters on the chart. It would be 3, 6, 4, and 5. So those are your numbers. And then you go over to your boxes. These are the same box, by the way. Go over to your box and you find 3, 6, 4, and 5. So you connect them, you draw lines. And so it shows here, you can do different methods for starting your line, for ending it, so you know which way is which. These are for repeated numbers. So the circle starts you out. So for this method, it starts you out at 6. So we're all the way down here. We're going to go for open. So your line, so your circle, for 6, go up to 7, directly above, over to 5, and then because you're repeating the shape here, and then the line, you end. So if you were to clear that, it'll look exactly the same, and that would be your sigil for close, or for open, my bad. So for doing that for love, we have a circle to start here on 3, then we go to 6, to 4, and then to 5. Then you have your line to end, like that. So for love, this would be your sigil. Now you can flourish these a little bit. They don't just have to be, boop, boop, boop. Because for me, that was always a little bit boring. If you like that method, you can do it. I think the sharp angles might work better for a different word, but for love, I like to go in a little bit more of a flourishy way. So now you have this and you can start to abstract it. So you can do your circle, and then for me, I would do more of this kind of shape. So that might be your love sigil, super, super simple. You know, it's easy to replicate, it's easy to look at. But usually your phrases are going to be a little bit more complicated, and you'll see this in some of the other methods, especially in, I believe it's Liber Null. Come on, where is it? So especially in like Liber Null. So this has a couple of the methods here. Let's get rid of this box. So the way that you do it is you can do one word and keep all the letters, or there's other ways. So this is, I wish to obtain the Necronomicon, but we're not going to do that one because we're not looking to obtain the Necronomicon. So let's do, because you always want to do affirmative statements with pretty much all magic anyway. I have self-love. So it tells you to eliminate any repeated letters. So you already have an I here, there's an I in wish, so you take those out. So I, H, A, V, E, S, and then you have your first one, E, L, F, so you get this La, that one's gone, O, V is already used, and E is already used. So now you remake it, I have S, L, F, O. Some people will choose to take out vowels, some won't. This is all up to your personal preference. You can make it shorter, so you could do without the vowels I, H, V, S, L, F. And those will both bring you very different results. But then there's like the pictorial method. There's also a different way of you get your final letters and then you rearrange them, and this is your mantra. So this is the thing that you would say. You could still do it as a sigil, but you don't have to. So if we bring our sigils back, move this down. So I have self-love, we'll actually move it over. So we need to translate this into numbers now. So the I is 9, H is 8, V is 4. And excuse me if I'm a little bit slow with this, I gotta do back and forth. S is 1, L is 3, and F is 6. So now we have those, we can go onto our square, start with a circle at 9, go to 8, 4, 1, 3, 6. You have your line to end. So we end up with something like this. Now for the abstraction, it's kind of obvious. Immediately my head goes to a star, so you might just do like, you know, something like that. You could abstract it, but you got to pay attention to where you're going. So out this way. So if you wanted to abstract it, you could maybe just do this. So you have a circle here in your line. You know, however you want to abstract it, you can. You could also make it more of the flourishing method. You could round it out, you know, doesn't have to be anything specific. But there's also other methods. You can find other boxes you could use. You know, there's all sorts of different ways. So if you don't want to use the box, there's also a lot of people call it the witch's wheel. I don't actually know where this comes from. Now let's get this out. Whoop. So this one's called the witch's wheel. I don't actually know where this comes from. But this is one you'll see online a lot. I guess it's from chaostarot.com, this particular image. But you'll find this wheel online a lot, and you can do something like this. You could rearrange the letters if there's a different way you prefer it, but it's, you know, in alphabetical order here around the circle, and then around here again, and then around here again for the final one. So if you have this method, we're going to go over it again, but you have all this. I'm just going to do the shortened version because it's faster. So you do I, H, and it's going to take a little while because you got to find everything, V, S, L, and F. So when you clear it out, you'd have this. So this would be another option for your sigil. Boom, 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 boom. And there it is. And you know, you could abstract it. If you see a certain image, like this could be a bow tie. You could look at the triangles very literally. It could be a lot of different things. So as you abstract it, you can do this. Some people will start to add like lines and dots and circles and stuff, or wherever there's a cross, you might add a circle or whatever. You know, this is all up to you. Once you start making it fancier, or if certain symbols mean certain things to you, you can then add them in. So for self-love, you could maybe start it with a heart instead, and then this heart leads wherever. You know, there's all sorts of ways. So you just gotta start getting creative with it. You can also look up variations online. You can find all sorts of cool things if you just search witchcraft runes, and you'll find things online. So, on to the pictorial methods. So, pictorial stuff is obviously going to be much more picture-based. So this one, they have to restrain an adversary. You have your adversary. There's the name there. And you can see how they slowly get incorporated. So it gets reduced from a body and some nails to more of a stick figure-esque. And the J is still right here in this curve. And you still have all of the nails that you want in the specific places. They eventually get further reduced. Some of it gets flipped. You add this symbol here. And then your finished sigil, as you get on with it, is here. And so you can work back through and you can see the lines still, the 4, in their different places in the finished sigil from this one. And so if you knew what you were looking at, you would know that this is what it is. But a person's not going to be able to tell that this is what you started with if this is what they're looking at the end. So this is one way of doing it pictorially, just sort of reducing it down. But the other method, which is from Sigil Witchery, which I adore, is more in line of the ones that make most sense to you, the symbols that have the most meaning to you. So, in the book, we have a couple of these examples. And it's important to go through and read the book because these are not just like, here's a sigil you can have for against bullying in general. She goes over why she incorporates some of these symbols, but it's important to know that a symbol that means something to me will not mean the same for you, and what you draw from is going to be really, really different. So if you work with the planets a lot, you might incorporate the planetary symbols. So if you want, Jupiter to be incorporated, you have the symbol for Jupiter, you might have the symbol for Saturn, maybe Mars or Venus, but that's if that means something to you. For me as an astrologer, those planetary symbols are going to mean something. But if you're not an astrologer, or if the planets are not something that you work with really, and those aren't going to be things for you. But everybody has symbols that they know things. A heart, that's sort of a universal symbol. So if you wanted to include a heart, you could. But how does that heart symbol change if you break it in half? Does this mean something to you? Or does that mean something different from, the broken, like zigzag, jagged piece between a heart, rather than like this for one person could mean soulmates, whereas for another it could mean heartbreak. So you got to pay attention to what very, very specific symbol you're using. A heart that's not filled in could be an empty heart, or it's just a drawing of a heart for somebody else with an outline. So make sure that you're really thinking about what that symbol means to you when you're using it. But I mean, it really is just, what does the symbol mean for you? And she really goes in the book and breaks down sort of like a way of analyzing those symbols for yourself. She gives examples for herself. Colors can also mean something. So if you're drawing it out with ink or crayons or whatever you have at your disposal, the colors that you use in it, or for certain parts or for the whole thing, can help change the way that you think about that symbol. So, it might be able to be used in a couple of different ways depending on the color you put it in. So, what does a red heart mean versus maybe a green heart? Does that make a difference for you if the heart's in green or in red? That sort of thing. Or if you have a rose that is blue versus red. So the color considerations are also something to think about within this. Now the final method that I'll go over is going to be runes. So we have all probably seen runes. If you're in the online community, you've probably seen them around. And so these are called bind runes. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to show that book again because I think it's really, really important. Futhark by Edred Thorsson. This book goes over every single rune. It goes over the historical context and the way that it's changed, and goes over a couple of different methods for making bind runes and for using them in a way that we would now call sigils. So I definitely recommend this book cover to cover, absolutely, if you plan to use runes. Make sure you're not just finding the first definition you find online. This book is going to give you more in-depth coverage of why they mean what they mean and exactly how they were used. Because, like, one of the symbols in here means property, but it's mobile property because it refers to cattle, which were property, which meant prosperity because they brought in money. So, like, the deeper meaning and the full meaning behind the symbol is going to be more than just property. You have to understand what kind of property that meant. So, if we're going to use runes, it's basically as simple as it sounds. If you have runes that mean something, you put them all together in whatever symbol, and these are the ones that you use. And if you know runes, you can sort of pick apart some of these. You have this one, you have this one, you have this one. So there's lots of different ones that get incorporated in, and only you are truly going to know what they mean versus anything else, because especially on this one particularly, you can start to pick out a couple, but here in the middle it can start getting interesting because there's a couple that could be overlapping, and they could be using all of them, they could be using none of them, and we don't entirely know. So you could have this one, this one. There's also one that looks like this. There's also one that looks like this. So there's lots of different ways. You know, we have this versus this for up top here. It could be either of those. There's just one that's a straight line. It's just this. So that could be the base, or it could be the base using this one here at the bottom, just extended up and over. So you won't truly be able to know necessarily what all these are. You could have a guess. You might be able to start figuring it out, but without you making it yourself, you won't know what the exact intention is without making it. So I caution against using bind runes that you find online, or really any sigil that you find online, because you're not the one who created it, charged it, and made its intention the way it's meant to be. So I highly recommend doing these, especially because they're going to end up being so personal, and a lot of symbols are going to mean personal things to you. So if you're making your own, definitely do your research and do your own. But I happen to like these because they can get really creative, especially as you're looking through. So like this one we could break down. This is kind of obvious, but there's also this, and then there's this, which could also be, you know, that. So there's a couple of things that could be broken down in here, but there could also just be, you know, that straight line that we want to include. So bind runes, just make sure you're being careful with them, especially because not all of them are just good things. You know, it's not just all prosperity and love. Some of them aren't so pleasant, and so you don't want to incorporate the wrong thing into your symbol if you're not intending for that to be in there. So make sure you're charging it the way you want it to be. Now, what do you do once you have your symbol? So we can just go with one of these. We'll go with this one because it's simplest. So if you have this bind rune, we'll draw it out here. So you have that for whatever the intention is. Well, what do you do with it now? Well, first, I would say save it somewhere. I like to save mine. I have a couple that I've made in the past. I'm not going to share them here. I've shared them before somewhere online. I'll probably dig them up later. But you have this symbol. For me, there's lots of different ways. You can put it on a piece of paper. If it's for, let's say, money and prosperity, you could put it in your wallet. If it's for communication, you could put it in your phone case. If it is for creativity, you could put it with your art supplies if you do art. You know, it's lots of methods like that, and it's easiest just to put them on paper. You could also put them on things that you might carry with you or wear. So you might, like, make clay jewelry, or maybe you have a stone that you carry in your pocket and you draw it on with a marker or something. So that's a really easy method. You could also draw it in the dirt at a particular location if it's for something a little bit more location-based. Or if you are burying some spell work that is meant to be buried, you could do the symbol on the dirt over where it's buried. The one you'll see online a lot is going to be carving it into candles. Now, this isn't an image that I've taken myself. This is one that I found online, but it's just a good example. So here they have carved their symbol into their candle. They've used glitter on it. You can sort of start to assume, based on using gold glitter and a green candle, it's probably something for money and prosperity. So they've carved it into the candle, and they've made it just part of the whole piece. And so you can do that. You could do it on the side if it's big enough. You could do it here at the bottom. And then you can go over it with oils and herbs, and so now you've carved it in and it's part of your intention. You could burn a candle on top of a sigil. You could either draw it on, let's say, a plate. You could put it on a piece of paper that goes under the candle, as long as you're willing to potentially have that piece of paper burn, so fire safety, of course. Or you could have it underneath the plate. So if you have your piece of paper here, that's your symbol. We'll just go with that. And then you'd have your plate placed on top. And then your candle. Really bad candle, but here we are. And so underneath all of it is your sigil piece of paper. And that way it won't get burned and you don't have to worry about it. If you want to, you could even include it in spell bags. So if you're doing a spell bag, you could have, here's your little pouch. Here's your piece of paper with your sigil. So your all your ingredients, you know, you have some herbs, maybe you have like a rock. So your rock goes in, your herbs go in, maybe some oil. And then your sigil would also go in that bag. You could draw the sigil on the bag itself. You could do that. All sorts of stuff. So really, just like anything with spell work, you just have to get a little bit creative with it. And just don't think too hard. Honestly, it's not always going to be so complicated. If you've got a pencil and a piece of paper, you can do a sigil. You can put it on your body, but I will say that I wouldn't necessarily tattoo them unless you've worked with a particular sigil for a while, just because you want to make sure that you understand exactly how it works and what methods that it might bring about. So if you're looking for a particular thing, I wouldn't necessarily carve it on your body unless you're ready to have that sort of be a permanent fixture in your life. But that is the thing. I believe in Sigil Witchery, actually, the author shows pictures of sigils that are tattooed, I believe, on her body. I'd have to double check. But you can, like lots of people do. You can also just draw it on with something that would be temporary, like a marker, even a washable marker, You could draw it on with water. So if you've made yourself some sort of special water or some sort of oil, you can draw it on with the oil or the water or whatever. And so now you can put it on your body and have it with you that way. It soaks in, and eventually, just like anything, it'll get processed through your body, the physical materials that you use, and then that will dissipate. Alright, well, I hope that's been useful for you guys. It's a pretty simple concept, there's just lots of different methods, so I hope that one of these methods really resonates with you guys. I know that I have my favorite, it's more of the Sigil Witchery way of doing more of a pictorial method, but I also like using the runes. I'll mix stuff up here and there, but if the letter version works for you, either with the box or the Witch's Wheel, go for those too. If it works, it works. Definitely I would read all of these, honestly, because, runes are going to be important for a lot of people to know, and how they work and how they're incorporated into bind runes, I think would be really helpful. Obviously, this one's going to be important for any sort of pictorial methods and seeing how to put symbols together. This one for chaos magic, just in general, I think it's important for people to know that chaos magic is not just doing magic chaotically, but it's an actual, methodology. So this book especially would be really, really important. And then if you want to get into the squares, I would really, really, really recommend this one. There's a lot to it, so just take it slow. But these are all good recommended reading. They're not the only books out there on sigils and stuff like that, but they are the ones that I recommend first. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So, blessed be!